I thought I had the perfect friend group until I realized they were manipulating me, talking behind my back, sabotaging my confidence, and using my secrets against me. It took years to see the truth, but I finally walked away from the people who pretended to care. I grew up in a small town where everyone knew each other, which made friendships feel deeper, like family. And in high school, I found my people, Tyler, Jess, and Danny. We clicked instantly. It wasn't even one of those slow burn friendships. It was fast, intense, and all-consuming. Within a month, we were doing everything together. Sleepovers, group projects, movie nights, all of it. They weren't just my friends. They were my lifeline. At the time, I didn't have the best home life. My parents fought constantly, and I spent most nights trying to drown it out with music and homework. But then came the group chat, the constant stream of messages, memes, vending, and "Are you okay?" Texts that made me feel like maybe I finally had somewhere to belong. Tyler was a loud, funny one, always the first to break the silence in a room, always ready with a story that made people laugh. Jess was the smart one, sarcastic, sharp, the kind of person who made you feel lucky to be on her good side. Danny was quieter, sweet, but observant. She noticed things no one else did and had this way of making you feel like you mattered. And me? I was the glue, or so I thought, the peacemaker, the one who always remembered birthdays, smoothed over arguments, stayed up late to help with essays, and listened to their endless drama. I thought I had it good. I really did. And to be fair, there were good times. Bonfires, beach trips, our matching tattoos when we turned 18, which I now regret, by the way. But now, years later, when I replay those memories in my head, I notice things I didn't see back then, like how Jess would always tease me in ways that hit a little too close to home, or how Tyler only called when he needed something, and disappeared when I needed him, or how Danny used to say she loved how real I was, then rolled her eyes behind my back. At the time, I told myself it was just how friends are. We joke, we have moods, we get busy, right? But deep down, I think I knew something was off. I just didn't want to believe it. Because when you built your world around certain people, it's terrifying to imagine it was never real. And this was only the start of the unraveling. I still remember the night it happened. It was a Friday. Tyler had just gotten dumped again, and the group decided to meet up at Jess's place to cheer him up. The plan was chill, pizza, a few drinks, maybe some bad karaoke. The usual. I showed up with snacks. Even bought Tyler's favorite cookies on the way. Just trying to be thoughtful like always. But the second I walked in, the energy was weird. They were already drinking without me. Already laughing at something I hadn't heard. Already in the middle of the story I wasn't a part of. No one looked up when I came in. Not even a hey. Not even from Danny, who usually noticed everything. I stood there awkwardly with a bag of chips in one hand, and a dumb smile I forced onto my face. Jess glanced at me and said, "You're late." I checked my phone. I wasn't. I thought we said 8. I asked, trying to laugh it off. We started early. Whatever. Jess said, already turning away. That night, I felt like a guest in my own friend group. The conversations went on without me. Every time I tried to chime in, Jess talked over me. Tyler only spoke to complain about his ex, and Danny barely looked me in the eye. At one point, I made a joke, something small, dumb, harmless, and Jess snapped. "Wow. Okay, maybe you should stick to being the emotional support friend, not the funny one." Everyone laughed, even Danny. I felt my face flush, but I just smiled and looked down, pretending it didn't bother me. But it did. I stayed quiet the rest of the night. I sat in the corner, eating the cookies I brought like a prop in a show I didn't belong in anymore. And the worst part, they didn't even notice. Not when I stopped talking. Not when I left early without saying goodbye. Not even the next day. No text. No "where'd you go?" Just silence. That was the first time I allowed myself to admit something felt off. But instead of pulling away, I tried harder. I told myself they were just having a bad night. That maybe I was being too sensitive. That I'd come on too strong. So I apologized. Yes, I actually messaged Jess the next morning to apologize for being quiet, and she just replied, "It's fine." Looking back now, I hate that version of me. The one who thought it was her fault they didn't care. There's a kind of moment that sneaks up on you, not dramatic, not loud, just quiet enough to stick in your memory forever. For me, it happened during a weekend brunch at a new spot Jess had found on Instagram. The place was all aesthetic. Plants hanging from the ceiling, overpriced avocado toast, waiters in linen aprons. I was already feeling out of place when I sat down, late because of traffic. Jess gave me a passive-aggressive, "Nice of you to join us," while Danny fake laughed like it was a joke. I laughed too, because what else was I supposed to do? Halfway through the meal, the conversation turned to relationships. Tyler had just matched with someone on a dating app and was talking about his usual type. Jess asked me, "So are you still single? Or are you emotionally unavailable and picky this week?" Everyone burst out laughing. I blinked. For a second, I thought I misheard her. But no, she really said that. It hit me harder than I expected. I just sat there with my fork frozen halfway to my mouth, trying to decide whether to laugh along or ask her what the hell that was about. I chose silence. Again, because confronting her would mean making a scene, and I'd somehow become the person in the group who never made scenes. I spent the rest of the meal watching them laugh, and inside jokes I didn't know anymore. Danny had started whispering things to Jess across the table. Tyler was glued to his phone. No one asked me a single thing about my life, my week, my anything. At one point, Jess asked, "Remember when you cried in the parking lot after your last breakup? I thought you were going to pass out from how hard you were sobbing." She said it like it was funny. Everyone laughed again. I wasn't even angry. I was embarrassed. Embarrassed that my pain had become their entertainment. I laughed too, quietly, because that was my role now. The overly sensitive, emotional one they can make fun of to feel better about their own messes. When I got home that night, I stood in the shower for an hour. Not because I needed to wash up, but because I couldn't stop replaying every moment, every comment, every look. It felt like I was shrinking, and they were the ones doing the shrinking for me. That was the night I stopped telling them about my personal life. And none of them noticed. A few months after that brunch, my birthday rolled around. I wasn't expecting much, just a casual dinner, maybe some cake, maybe some real laughter for once. I'd been trying to stay optimistic, telling myself that things would feel better once we all had time to reconnect. So I made a reservation at a quiet local place, somewhere I liked. I even made sure it wasn't too expensive because I knew Jess would complain about wasting money on mediocre food if it wasn't up to her standards. I sent them the details a week in advance. The day came. I sat at the restaurant. First 5 minutes? Fine. 10? Still nothing. 15? I started checking my phone every 30 seconds. I sent a "Hey, you guys on the way?" message in our group chat. No answer. At the 25-minute mark, my phone lit up. It was Danny. "Sorry, babe. We ended up grabbing drinks with some of Jess's coworkers. Totally slipped our minds. Let's do something next week." Slipped their minds. My birthday. I sat there with a damn candle and a slice of cheesecake, surrounded by strangers, feeling like the biggest idiot in the world. I paid for my untouched food, tipped well just to be polite, and walked home in the rain like it was a cliché movie moment I didn't ask for. I didn't cry. Not that night. I think I was too tired to cry. What hit hardest wasn't the loneliness. It was that they didn't even try to make it right. No apology. No real explanation. They just moved on like nothing happened. Like I wasn't even worth remembering that day. A week later, Tyler sent me a meme in the group chat like everything was normal. I left it on read. That's when I really started pulling away. And that's when they started noticing, but not in the way you'd hope. They didn't ask, "Hey, are you okay?" They asked, "Why are you being distant lately?" Like I was the one being unreasonable. Like being hurt meant I was creating drama. At that point, I didn't know how to explain the kind of betrayal that comes not from enemies, but from people who once called you family. But trust me, I was about to learn a whole lot more about betrayal. After that birthday, the vibe shifted hard. I started pulling back, trying to protect myself, but that only seemed to make things worse. Instead of asking what was wrong, they started accusing me of being too sensitive and making a big deal out of nothing. Jess sent me this long text saying, "Maybe you should look at how you act sometimes. You always make things about you, and honestly, it's exhausting." Tyler chimed in during a group chat. "We all have stuff going on. Maybe give a rest." I sat there, rereading their messages, feeling this knot in my stomach. I wasn't crazy, right? I was hurting. I was lonely. But suddenly I was a problem. They made me question everything. My feelings, my memories, my sanity. I wanted to scream, "Why can't you just see that I'm hurting?" But the words wouldn't come. Instead, I started apologizing for things I didn't even understand. I told them I'd try harder, that maybe I was wrong. Meanwhile, they kept sharing stories about their fun nights without me, posting pictures I wasn't tagged in, tagging each other but leaving me out. The more I reached out, the more I felt like I was pushing against a wall. One day, I found out Jess had been telling people I was too clingy and always in drama behind my back. That crushed me, not because I cared what they said, but because it was the same group I had once trusted with everything. They weren't just ignoring me. They were actively turning others against me. I felt so alone, like I'd been erased, like I was the villain in my own story. And that's when I finally started thinking seriously about walking away. It took me a long time to admit it out loud, but by the time we hit senior year, I was done. I was done pretending they cared when they didn't. Done bending over backward to keep the peace while they stabbed me in the back. Done making excuses for their cruelty. The breaking point came one night, during a group project meeting. We were supposed to be working, but instead just started picking at me, making snide comment about how I never pull my weight and always play the victim. Tyler laughed, Danny just watched, and nobody defended me. I snapped. I told them exactly what I thought, how toxic it felt to be around them, how I felt used and disrespected. They didn't hear me. They heard an attack. Jess got hysterical, accusing me of trying to ruin the group and turn everyone against us. Tyler called me dramatic. Danny said I was too sensitive, and suddenly I was the one causing all the problems. That night I left the meeting and drove straight to my best friend from middle school, someone I hadn't spoken to in years, but who never judged me. I realized I was done wasting my time and energy on people who didn't want me around, people who thrived on tearing others down to feel better about themselves. It was terrifying to walk away. The silence was deafening at first. No texts, no calls, just emptiness. But that emptiness was also freedom. For the first time in years, I could breathe, and I finally understood that sometimes the hardest thing you can do is leave the people you thought were your family. But it's also the bravest. After I walked away, it felt like stepping off a cliff into the unknown. I lost the people I thought I'd always have, and suddenly, I had no idea who I was without them. At first, the silence was deafening. No group texts, no late-night calls, no "you up?" messages. I felt invisible, like I'd been erased. But slowly, that emptiness started to feel like space. Space to breathe, to heal, to figure out what I really wanted. I reconnected with old friends, people who had never judged me, who didn't twist my words or use my secrets against me. I found solace in small things, long walks alone, journaling, and finally, therapy. Therapy was scary at first. Talking about what I'd been through, admitting I'd been hurt by people I loved, wasn't easy, but it was necessary. It helped me untangle the mess of emotions, guilt, and confusion. I learned to set boundaries, to say no without feeling guilty, to recognize when someone wasn't good for me and walk away before they hurt me again. I realized that friendship wasn't supposed to feel like a battlefield. It was supposed to be safe. And for the first time in years, I started to feel safe again. Of course, healing isn't a straight line. I still have moments where I miss the old group or question if I overreacted. But those moments get fewer and my confidence grows. I'm learning who I am outside of the drama, outside of the gossip, outside of the toxic cycle. And it feels like freedom. Rebuilding my life after walking away from that toxic group wasn't easy. Trust had been shattered, and I was scared to let anyone in. I spent months keeping people at arm's length, afraid they'd turn on me the way the others had. But slowly, I met new people, some through work, others at school events or random coffee shop conversations. It wasn't instant friendship. It was awkward, slow, sometimes painful. There was this one time I told a new friend about my past, half expecting her to laugh or judge. Instead, she listened, really listened. No judgment, no gossip, just support. That moment was huge. It taught me that friendship could be different, that people could be kind without strings attached. I started to feel safe sharing little things, my thoughts, my fears, even my dreams. It was scary, but it felt good. I also learned to spot red flags early. A friend who only called when they needed something, who made jokes at my expense, who didn't respect my boundaries. I didn't want to make the same mistakes again. Some friendships blossomed, others faded, but each one taught me more about who I am and what I deserve. I'm not perfect, but I'm getting better at protecting my heart. And for the first time in a long time, I'm excited about the future. Even as I started building better friendships, the old feelings didn't just vanish. Guilt and loneliness crept in, like shadows following me everywhere. I felt guilty for leaving the group behind, like I was abandoning the only people I'd ever really known. Sometimes I wonder if I was overreacting, if maybe I should have tried harder to fix things. Then there was the loneliness. When you've been surrounded by people your whole life, even toxic ones, suddenly being alone feels like an emptiness you didn't expect. The silence was loud. The quiet was suffocating. I missed the noise, the jokes, the chaos, even if it came with pain. Some nights, I'd scroll through old photos, laughing at memories while tears welled up. It was confusing to feel both sadness and relief at the same time. Therapy helped me work through those feelings. I learned that guilt is a tricky emotion. It tries to keep you trapped in bad situations out of loyalty or fear. But I also learned that loneliness isn't weakness. It's a space for growth, a pause before something better. I realized I wasn't alone anymore. I had myself, and I had people who truly cared. And that made all the difference. After months of battling guilt and loneliness, I started realizing something important. I deserved better, not just from friends, but from myself. Self-love wasn't some cheesy phrase anymore. It became my survival tool. I stopped apologizing for needing space. I stopped trying to please everyone just to keep peace. I stopped doubting my worth. It wasn't easy. Some days, the old voice, the one that told me I wasn't good enough, still whispered loudly. But I learned to talk back, to remind myself I'm worthy, I'm strong, I'm enough. I started setting boundaries like a pro, saying no when I needed to, walking away when things felt toxic again. And you know what? It felt powerful. I rediscovered passions I'd pushed aside for sake of fitting in. I picked up painting again. I started running. I wrote more honestly in my journal. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was thriving. I realized friendships aren't about how many people you have around you. It's about the quality of those connections. Slowly, my life started filling with people who lifted me up instead of tearing me down. And that made me feel alive again. After I reclaimed some of my strength, I found myself ready to open up again. It wasn't easy. After all the betrayal and hurt, trusting people felt like a huge risk. But slowly I let a few new people in. People who didn't judge or gossip, who asked about my day and actually cared about the answers. One friend, Mark, stood out. He wasn't flashy or loud, just steady, the kind of guy who listened more than he talked and showed up when it counted. Talking with him felt safe, like I could finally breathe around someone else. Opening up also meant facing my old wounds, remembering how deeply those toxic friendships had cut me. Some days, the memories still stung, and I'd catch myself doubting whether I was worth being treated better. But each time I caught those doubts, I reminded myself, those toxic friends didn't define me. Their actions reflected their own problems, not my value. Bit by bit, I started healing. I stopped letting the past dictate how I felt about myself in the present. And I began believing that I could build friendships based on trust, respect, and kindness. As I moved forward, I realized the importance of boundaries. For years, I let my toxic friends cross every line, guilt me into staying and dismiss my feelings. Now, I was learning to say no and mean it. It was uncomfortable at first. Saying no to invitations, standing up for myself when jokes felt cruel, and walking away from conversations that drained me took courage I didn't know I had. But with each boundary I set, I felt a little lighter, a little stronger. I started recognizing red flags early. People who didn't respect my time or feelings, who made me feel small or unimportant. I learned to distance myself from them before things could spiral. At the same time, I noticed friendships that thrived on mutual respect and honesty. These relationships made me feel safe and seen, like I could be my authentic self without fear. Healthy friendships weren't perfect. They had disagreements and ups and downs, but they never left me feeling less than. I was building a new circle, one where respect was a foundation, not just convenience or habit. It wasn't easy. Old habits die hard. But every day, I grew more confident in protecting my peace. As I moved forward, I realized the importance of boundaries. For years, I let my toxic friends cross every line, guilt me into staying and dismiss my feelings. Now, I was learning to say no and mean it. It was uncomfortable at first. Saying no to invitations, standing up for myself when jokes felt cruel, and walking away from conversations that drained me took courage I didn't know I had. But with each boundary I set, I felt a little lighter, a little stronger. I started recognizing red flags early. People who didn't respect my time or feelings, who made me feel small or unimportant. I learned to distance myself from them before things could spiral. At the same time, I noticed friendships that thrived on mutual respect and honesty. These relationships made me feel safe and seen, like I could be my authentic self without fear. Healthy friendships weren't perfect. They had disagreements and ups and downs, but they never left me feeling less than. I was building a new circle, one where respect was a foundation, not just convenience or habit. It wasn't easy. Old habits die hard. But every day, I grew more confident in protecting my peace. Sometimes when I'm alone, I think about those years, the good, the bad, and everything in between. It's strange how much I learned from friendships that felt like poison. I realized that toxic friends taught me more about myself than any perfect friendship ever could. They showed me my own limits, my capacity for forgiveness, and my need to protect my heart. I learned to trust my gut, to listen to that quiet voice inside telling me when something wasn't right. I saw how important self-respect was, and how no friendship was worth sacrificing my peace of mind. But maybe the biggest lesson? That sometimes the people we lose aren't really losses at all. They're freeing us for better things. I'm not angry anymore. I don't hold grudges. I've accepted that not everyone is meant to stay in your life forever. And that's okay, because life is about growth, change, and making room for people who truly want to see you thrive. After all the pain and lessons, I finally started looking forward instead of back. I focused on nurturing friendships that felt genuine and supportive, the kind that made me smile without strings attached. I joined new groups, tried new hobbies, and met people who didn't bring drama or judgment, just kindness and laughter. It wasn't always easy to trust again, but every small positive connection felt like a step toward healing. I found joy in simple things, long talks over coffee, honest conversations, and friends who celebrated my successes without envy. Sometimes, I even surprised myself by saying no to toxic situations without guilt. Life started feeling lighter, brighter, and more mine. I realized that the future I want is possible, full of people who lift me up and respect my boundaries. And it's a future I'm ready to build one friendship at a time. Looking back on everything, it's crazy to think how much I endured and how far I've come. Those toxic friendships broke me down, but they also pushed me to find strength I never knew I had. I learned that my worth isn't defined by anyone else's opinions or actions. It's defined by how I treat myself. I learned to forgive, not to forget, but to free myself from carrying that weight. And most importantly, I learned that choosing myself isn't selfish. It's necessary. Today, I'm surrounded by people who truly care. Friends who listen, support, and respect me. I still have scars, but they remind me of my resilience. This isn't just a story about toxic friends. It's a story about survival, growth, and reclaiming your life. If you're out there feeling stuck or betrayed, know this: you are not alone. You deserve better, and you can break free. Thanks for following my story.